Now, let's be honest, when it comes to gaming, physical health is not one of the benefits that you describe to it. Mental health, yes, but physically, we tend to be sitting or standing around a lot. We might spend hours hunched over our figures or models while we're painting them. And of course, the standard diet of most gaming sessions seems to be a can of fizzy drink, a bag of crisps, and a bar of chocolate. So, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're going to be talking about health issues, and one increasingly common health issue in particular, type 2 diabetes. Hi, I'm Robert Poynton. Thanks for joining me today. And you may remember I mentioned an upload or two ago that, well, just over a year ago now, I was diagnosed as having type 2 diabetes. This is something that I know is increasingly common in society, and a few people have asked me about it as well. And I also know there's a few other gamers out there with the same condition. So, what I thought today is just to describe my own response to getting that news and how I've dealt with it and how I'm getting on with it. Before I get into that specifically, health, of course, is a major concern for all of us, or at least it should be. And there are many components that go to make up good health: physical health, mental health, mobility, certain amount of strength, balance, hand-eye coordination. All these various things go towards our overall health, and they all combine together to form what we might call our general sense of well-being. It's difficult to feel hale and hearty if you've got something physically going on. Maybe you've got a busted up shoulder or something like that. And of course, by the same token, we can be physically in good health, but mentally in a poor place, in a bad place. So these two things are constantly working around each other and influencing each other to a large extent. I need to point out at the outset, of course, that I'm not a medical professional. I have no formal medical training. Uh, I have trained with and do have friends who are GPs and doctors. One friend of mine's a biomechanical engineer. It's got some very interesting stuff to say when you talk about movement. But my own experience is in what you might call a fitness and movement field, because my day job is teaching martial arts, health, fitness, and well-being. I've been training in martial arts since I was a kid. I suppose I began my serious study at the age of 17, spent a lot of time in the Chinese martial arts, then branched out into various other things. And about 20 years ago, I started training in Russian martial arts as well. So people might then say, but isn't martial arts all about fighting and, busting people up and all the rest of it? What's that got to do with health and healing and movement? Well, the simple answer is any martial arts system worth its salt, particularly the older traditional ones, always had a healing side to them as well. And certainly in the Chinese arts, it was very common for the local martial arts instructor to also be the bone setter, the herbalist, or to be an acupuncturist, and so on. And I found when I started training in the Russian arts, they came with a huge range of health practices as well, including massage, manipulation, diet, fasting, cold water treatments, stretching, a lot of breath work as well, which people sometimes find surprising. That breath work, of course, has been taken out by certain people and turned into, well, in my eyes, a very commercial thing. But let's put that to one side for the moment. And this, in a way, shouldn't be a surprise, really, because the old view was if you're training up warriors, you're training up people to defend your village or your clan or whatever it is. They're of no use to anyone if they're injured, if they've got the flu, and everything else. So these healing arts often came with the martial arts to help people in training, to make their training healthy, to build people who are not just effective in terms of martial art application, but are also healthy, well-balanced individuals as well. And even today, I know that there's a lot of work being done with some of the things I do, working with veterans, particularly working with people with PTSD. In fact, just 2 months ago, I spent a day with the local police working on PTSD issues with them, and that was all from my martial arts training. So, to get back to the subject at hand, type 2 diabetes. I was diagnosed just over a year ago. I think it was November 23. This is now February 25. And it came as a bit of a surprise, especially when I was told, oh, when you were in for your last blood test, that did show that you were pre-diabetic, but we forgot to mention that. We forgot to tell you about that. Well, there you go. That's life. That's how things work sometimes. So I didn't even get a warning that I was pre-diabetic. I'm just straight in type 2. In a way, this should have come as no surprise, because although I've always been very active, obviously with my martial arts and Tai Chi and all the rest of it, I have always been a sugarholic as well. Now, this might go back to my childhood, where we were given sweets to keep us quiet, I imagine. So a constant diet of sweets and cakes and all the rest of it. And pre-diabetes, I think nothing of having a bar of chocolate every day. Very sweet tooth. Of course, that has all had to change, because the main issue with type 2 diabetes is I need to control my blood sugar levels, my glucose levels. If they go up too high and they stay there, then there's all sorts of nasty side issues, some of which I've already had a little taste of, including nerve damage to the feet. So really what I've got in my feet now is a constant, like pins and needles, tingling. I have managed to ease that a certain amount, but we'll get onto that later. But that is one of the side effects of type 2. I also have to have regular eye tests now, because it can affect the eyesight. Luckily, so far so good with that aspect at least. So if you are pre-diabetic, or you've just been diagnosed as type 2, or it's just something you might want to look at, especially as you get a bit older, which we all are, especially if maybe you're not so active, then what are the things you need to be thinking about? There's two issues, really. The first and the most important is your diet. Of course, whatever you take in, whatever you ingest, is going to have some effect on your blood sugar levels. Obviously, something that is high in sugar, like that bar of chocolate or honey or these kind of things, are going to what we call spike the blood sugar level. Alongside that, you can think of your activities and exercise, because guess what? Why does the body produce glucose? To give the muscles energy. So if we start using our muscles in certain ways, that will use up that glucose and our blood sugar level drops down. This is all very basic. I'm giving you this, by the way. Of course, if you go on YouTube, there'll be, and I've watched myself, there are hour-long presentations on the science and everything behind this. But for me, I've always been concerned with the practical. This is the issue. What can I do about it? Let's see what works. So we think of diet and we think of exercise. Now, I'm going to put exercise to one side at the moment, because that's a whole big area in itself. And it is something that I'm thinking about looking at. I'm thinking about maybe looking at setting up a Patreon page, or doing something with my SimplyFlow, which is the name of my health school, our fitness and health classes. Maybe making videos available to people who are interested on all the various different aspects of movement, flow, mental health, physical health, fitness, and all the rest of it. And these are things that you can do at any age. I have taught people over the years, literally from 8 to 88. So there's something for everyone. Everyone can get involved in this kind of thing, whatever their age, whatever their condition. So that's the physical side. Let's put that to one side for the moment, and let's talk about diet. So when I was first diagnosed, I say it was kind of a shock, kind of a surprise, and I had an appointment booked with the diabetes nurse. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm criticising people too much because, as I mentioned, at my local clinic, I have very good service from the doctors. The diabetes nurse I was not so happy with for a couple of reasons. One, there's a standard sort of fold out they give you, and they will put you probably on a course. This is a day-long course that you go along to, and they tell you all about diabetes and what you should be doing and everything else. So I had a look at that, and I spoke to a couple of friends who have been on them, and they both sort of said, you might find it useful, but according to them, this thing was a little bit like, this is an apple, this is a cake. It was on that kind of level. Now, it may be that some people would find that useful. For me, I didn't particularly think that. I did look at some of the stuff online. What I found more useful when I went on the website was there was a forum on there, so people were putting up different ideas. So that was useful. But the other thing that really surprised me with the nurse is that I'd already been doing a bit of research, and I heard about these things called continuous glucose monitors, CGMs. I'll show you one in a moment. This is basically a way of monitoring your blood sugar levels throughout the day. Now, there's two ways to do this. One is you can do the prick test. Yeah, I know a few people who have failed the prick test. But anyway, so this is like a needle device, and you basically prick your finger. You have a little monitor like this. There's a strip goes in there. You touch the strip to the little bit of blood. That goes up and reads it, and you'll get an instant figure on the monitor here. So this is great because you can do that and it will give you your blood sugar level right there and then. Let's say, for argument's sake, it's 7.2. Oh, right. Now, the downside of this is that's 7.2, but is that going up or is it going down? So, of course, I can do another prick test 10 minutes later. Now it's 7, so I know I'm going down. However, this means potentially you're doing these tests, every 15 minutes or after every meal you do a few tests. So these I feel are okay as a general guide, but I think the CGM is much better. In fact, I would go as far to say that this is a vital bit of kit. The type I use is called Freestyle Libre 3. There are lots of different types available. Again, if you do your research, there's lots of stuff on YouTube now. There's new versions and new models of these coming out all the time. I guess the silver lining is as more people get diabetes, then this sort of thing becomes more common and hopefully cheaper. This will set you back somewhere around 60, 70 quid, and it lasts for 14 days. So, it can work out quite expensive. Having said that, if you're using these, then the strips for these are about 15 quid for 30 or 50 maybe, I think. So if you're doing 6 of those a day, that still works out fairly expensive. Now, what this monitor does, when you open it, you get this rather fearsome looking thing. You take this cap off, and basically you or your partner stamps this on your arm, bump, not through the shirt, you have to put it in direct contact with the skin, and it pins this monitor to you. So there's a needle in the back. The needle looks quite fearsome, but you really don't feel a thing. And if I just roll up here, that sort of sticks on there. You can get covers to put over them as well to keep them waterproof and everything. So that stays on there for 14 days before it deactivates. What that then does is you download an app, and that sends a reading to your phone. So you have to have your phone nearby on Bluetooth for it to work. And what you get on there is a continuous reading, and it will be in the shape of a graph. So you can get your instant reading because it will say, 6.3 at the moment, but you also get this graph. So even if I've not checked it for a couple of hours, I can see my readings for that time, and I'll have an up line or a down line or hopefully a nice flat line. So even if you're wearing it at night, of course, you keep this thing on and you've got your phone nearby. You get up in the morning, you can check. What you should find generally is at night, all right, you've got a nice flat line because, of course, you're not eating, you're not spiking your blood sugar. Now, what really surprised me with the diabetes nurse is when I mentioned this, she said, oh, no, you don't want to use one of those. It will just create stress. And I found that a little bit odd, because what would create stress for me, if I'm worried about my blood sugar, is not knowing what my chuffing blood sugar is, right? That to me is going to create more stress. Now, I can see there is an element of when you first put this on, it's, oh, let me check my blood sugar, let me check, you're checking it every 5 minutes. That's okay, that's quite natural, that'll soon pass. I think this is the third or fourth one I've worn. And yeah, at first I was a bit like that. But the single most important thing with this, because diabetes affects everyone in slightly different ways, is you can see exactly what type of food does what. So, for example, when I first got this, I thought, well, here's the thing. Pre-diabetes, my breakfast generally would be perhaps a bowl of porridge and a banana, because they're both healthy, right? Porridge, oats, and a banana. Good start to the day. I found and I learned, like, bananas have a lot of sugar in. So sugar, okay, I understood that. What I didn't know beforehand was carbohydrates. If you load yourself with carbohydrates, that also pushes up your blood sugar levels because it's made into glucose, right? Again, forgive the science here. I'm not a doctor. But basically, of course, you load yourself with carbs, and that is what gives your muscles energy. So porridge is very high in carbs. And when I experimented with the monitor here, even just with a small bar of porridge, I went up off the scale. I mean, I was up to like 13. I was aiming to keep things at around 7. Now I'm aiming to keep things around 5. There's a couple of different ways of measurements, by the way. So again, that's something you need to research. You can set your monitor to whichever method you prefer. So I learned straight away that this healthy breakfast I was eating was giving me a huge spike in blood sugar. Okay, let's cut that out. And I then applied this to all my meals. So, okay, for lunch, we're going to have some scrambled eggs and bacon, bit of tomato sauce, maybe a slice or two of toast. Let's see what that does. Right, toast, bread, carbs, that spikes. Try it without the toast. Lovely, nice straight line. Sometimes you get a little elevation, because anything you eat is going to have some impact, but you're certainly avoiding those big spikes. So I would say the monitor is vital for learning what food spikes you. Now, the other thing is, I also found out it's not just as simple as saying, yeah, if you eat some carbs, then that will spike. Because I also learned you can combine foods. So if I eat carbs, but load them up with a lot of protein or a lot of fats, and perhaps have some extra fiber as well, then that affects the blood sugar spike. It lowers it down. So through experimenting with various different types of food, and I have to give thanks to my wife who's been so patient with this, then I've worked out pretty much exactly now what I can eat that will keep me level. So, for example, I like to have some snacks on a weekend. Maybe I'm having a drink. Beer is out. But the good news is things like whiskey and wine, flatline, that's great. Now, of course, if I have a big bowl of crisps, lots of carbs, boom, up we go. However, I can have certain types of snacks. If I add in some cheese, if I add in some olives, if I put some pepper on, then there's no spike. So yeah, get yourself a CGM monitor, indispensable. Also, when I was first diagnosed, I was talking to friends about it and some of my students, and of course, there's people there who have gone through the same thing. And one of my students, Liz, lent me a great book by the late Dr. Michael Mosley about reversing diabetes. And it had a diet plan in there that was very strict, very strict. I did kind of draw from that, but I didn't go exactly to that. But I'll get onto the results in a moment. But I mentioned this to the diabetes nurse as well, and she was really indignant that, no, you can't reverse this. It's nonsense. Once you're there, you're there. What she was basically telling me was, yeah, you got this now for life and you're going to die of it, probably quite soon. Cheery stuff, right? Luckily, I'm quite robust mentally, I suppose. And, I thought, well, we'll see about this. So with that book and a lot of other research, as I mentioned, I've changed my diet. Really, now I've cut out carbs, certainly in terms of bread, pasta, rice, that sort of thing, pretty much totally. I've cut down my sugar intake probably by about 95%. I found things like stevia. If you want to sweeten your tea, then things like stevia are good. I found I can still satisfy my chocolate craving to a large extent by getting very high cocoa content, 85, 90, 95%, and just having a square or two of that a day. Again, no spike on the monitor. So that's fine. Really, it's just been a case of experimentation and finding which foods work best. And aside from that as well, I will just mention with the exercise, for example, I had a big piece of chocolate cake because, I'm only human. And partly just to see as well. Of course, that spiked me up. Interestingly enough, it didn't spike me as high as the porridge did, which was a surprise. So that took me up to like 10 or 11 or something. So I went outside and I did about 30 minutes training, various things that I do. And I came back and that had dropped right back down again. So what I took from that was, I can have a bit of chocolate cake or something every now and again. As long as I do some activity after, then, it's not a big deal. So a few weeks ago came the big day. I went for my annual check. Yeah, it was a little bit late, but, I can't blame anyone for that. The NHS is under a lot of pressure. And I saw the doctor this time, and she said, good news, 10 out of 10, gold star, your levels are back down to pre-diabetic. So I couldn't help but thinking back to people who had said it was impossible to do this because I've done it. And I know plenty of other people who have as well. So it's by no means that I'm special or particularly disciplined or anything else, but just with the assistance of a monitor. When I didn't have a monitor, I was using a test every now and again, particularly if I felt a little bit odd. This was another thing I was told. Again, the nurse said, oh, you'll be able to monitor yourself because you'll feel when your blood sugar's up, you'll feel it. I really found that not to be the case, to be honest. I could have times when my blood sugar level was high and I felt okay. I mean, I guess there's so many other things going on, right? You might have a bit of a cold, you might have a blood pressure thing going on, might feel a bit tired. So doing just relying on how you feel as a monitor, to me, is not that effective. Anyway, that's the state of play at the moment. I'm down to pre-diabetic levels. So I'm basically continuing with the diet that I've got now. My exercise hasn't really changed because I'm doing what I've been doing for the last however many years anyway. But if you are in that position, as I say, I would advise, look at your exercise. Let me know if you're interested in that, and I'll put out more information in one form or another on that. Even if you're not diabetic and you want to just check how things are, I would advise you get yourself a CGM of whatever make, whatever type. Oh, I would just add this caution in as well. Because these are quite expensive, say you're looking anywhere between 60, maybe even 90 quid, then you look on, Amazon, whatever, then you see a glucose monitor, £12.50. Well, you think, wow, that's cheap. Well, there's a reason it's cheap, because it's crap. It's total bullshit. There are these things you get where you put your finger in it, or there's one you wear as a watch, and they use infrared to take your blood sugar level reading. Total crap, total nonsense. Don't skimp. If you can, get yourselves one of these. You can get cheaper ones as well. There's ones that do readings every 15 minutes, for example. And just see. Have a little look at your diet, try some different things, see what works for you. Because I always think with health in general, physical health, mental health, if you have an aspect of feeling in control over what you're doing, you kind of know what's going on, and you have that aspect of control, that really helps you to deal with things psychologically. There's nothing worse, and we've probably all been in this situation. You have something, right? You feel a little lump, and you might worry and worry and worry about that. Always get it looked at, always get it checked out. Then you know what you're dealing with, if there's anything there to deal with at all. So I guess that's my takeaway message, is be responsible for your own health. We all know what's bad for us and what's good for us. If you are looking at exercise and fitness, don't feel you have to do one of these sort of exercise regimes. I've seen them called hell day exercise and extreme this and extreme that. No. There's a ton of things you can do, from swimming, from going for a walk, even just sitting down and doing some breathing exercises is beneficial. So don't think you have to get into this sort of intense gym routine or anything like that. So yeah, by all means, enjoy your gaming, because that is very good for our mental health. We're working our minds, we're being creative, we're thinking through problems, we're interacting with other people a lot. All great stuff. Just add into that, take a look at your exercise a little bit, see what you can do. Perhaps you can add something in. Keep an eye on your diet. And if you do have any major concerns, then look at these things to check out your blood sugar. Of course, you can also get your blood pressure tested and all that stuff as well. Always highly recommended. Learn what you're dealing with. Take a little bit of responsibility for yourself, and we'll keep on going. Okay, so that's it for today. Please do let me know your thoughts. If you've got any good tips or ideas as well, please do share them. And if you are interested in looking at fitness or exercise or programs for well-being and mental health, then do let me know. I'll be happy to put something together, whether it's a YouTube channel or Patreon or something. We can arrange something for that. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.